And the Talmud says the following. A potential convert came to Hillel. Well, first he came to his colleague Shammai. These were two friends who would study together, but they disagreed on many matters, especially in the area Shammai was more strict and Hillel was more lenient. They both respected each other, and they both were based on Torah. It wasn't an argument that was personalized or polarized as we find today. It was based on ideas, but there were different opinions. So this potential convert came to Shammai and said, please teach me the entire Torah, standing on one foot. And Shammai said, you can't do that. It's an entire body of work, an entire body of literature. Standing on one foot, that would be very disrespectful. And he rejected him, sent him away. He came to Hillel, and Hillel said to him, don't do unto others, the golden rule. Don't do unto others that which you don't want done unto you. This is the entire Torah, and the rest is commentary. Now go study. But one second. If you think about it, it's a beautiful statement. Another way of saying, love your friend as yourself. Love the other as yourself. V'ahavta l'recha kamocha. Love. This is the entire Torah. Beautiful. But there's a few issues here. First of all, a big part of the Torah has nothing to do with between human beings. It's between man and God. The Shabbat, kosher, the laws of offerings, so many agricultural laws, the laws in the time of the temple, Passover, they're not necessarily between human beings. So how could Hillel say it's all under the rubric called love? On the other hand, there are also laws. There are laws like charity, inviting guests, and being kind, and being giving and generous. Obviously, that can all go under that one statement, don't do unto others. But what about all the other laws? Secondly, there are many people who don't follow Torah, and they're very loving. Thirdly, there are people who follow Torah and are not loving. So what is Hillel's statement? It's a very nice statement on the surface, but when you start analyzing it, the answer is understanding God in a different way and love in a different way, a deeper way. And I'm citing now from chapter Lamed Beis, in Hebrew love, lev, heart, it's pronounced as love, chapter 32 in the Tanya. And there he says that the essence of love is transcendence, in one word. The transcendence of soul over body. Which means if you make materialism more important than spirituality, if you prioritize matter over spirit, you never can love another person. Love is based on prioritizing spirit over matter. And then two people, even though they may have two different bodies and have different material needs, but they can transcend that through love. So love is not about selfish love. Love is about soulfulness. And that's how he explains this statement in the Talmud. That Hillel is saying, everything in Torah, whether it's between man and man, between human being and human being, between human being and God, is all about love. It's all about refinement. Shabbat too. Yes, it may not be connected to another person because it's about between you and God, or prayer for that matter, or the other laws that may be kosher. But the whole idea is to make spirit dominate over matter, to become a more spiritual and therefore less egotistic and arrogant person. So everything goes under the rule. Don't do unto others as you don't want done to you. Because that's what Shabbat is meant to accomplish. That's what kosher is meant to accomplish, to make you a better person, a kinder person. What's the opposite of being kind and generous and so on is when you worship yourself. So in other words, God and Torah are really about transcendence. Now that's a very different interpretation. It's not just about rules and then you can behave in an obnoxious way. No, that's not consistent. It's all about becoming a more loving person. If a person keeps Shabbat and kosher and behaves in an arrogant way, they're missing. They can keep Shabbat, but they're not Shabbosdik. They can be kosher. They can eat kosher, but not be kosher people. So Hillel is saying it's all about that inner refinement, and it's equatable. It is synonymous. The fact that some people, so-called, keep Torah and are not more loving, they're missing the boat. They're doing it culturally, mechanically, robotically. The fact that people who don't keep Torah that are giving and loving and good people, if they had the Torah, they would be even more loving because it would be even more transcendent. So in other words, the concept of God is really not about you. It's not worshiping yourself. So I would make the argument, if somebody is a good person, whether they claim they believe in God or don't believe in God is irrelevant. They're behaving in a way that's greater than their own selves. So call it whatever you want to call it. It's just a word. You probably have heard me say this in the classes I give years ago when I began giving my classes. So the core group were people from the arts and entertainment industry. And very spiritual people, some Jewish, some not Jewish, but we all shared a deep spirituality. However, I found myself at a disadvantage because here I was, come from a traditional Jewish, Hasidic, Kabbalistic approach to life. And many of them were not traditional in any way. Their spirituality came from either Zen Buddhism or LSD or some other experience. And I felt I was at a disadvantage because before I even opened my mouth, they may be looking at me like one of those stereotypes that I mentioned. Now, I mentioned one, there's so many, because I wasn't projecting a neutral image. I may be reminding one person of an angry grandfather that schlepped them to synagogue on Yom Kippur or Passover. That was damn boring and he just couldn't stand to leave. So I may remind someone else of an irrelevant Hebrew school teacher that taught him hollow bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah lessons. Or I may remind someone of a pleasant memory of a very warm grandfather or a very warm parent that was kind and generous and giving. But because I didn't know, I decided to try an experiment. I decided to change my language. Instead of using any religious terms, I did not use any religious terms. I turned it into a completely secular conversation. Instead of God, I used words like higher reality, the essence of it all. If it was a particularly New Age crowd, I would say things like undefined layers of an unexistential consciousness. Stuff like that. Undefined states of higher awareness. If it was the Torah, I would use the word blueprint or roadmap. Mitzvahs, I use connections. And Mashiach, Geula, redemption, I use the word destination. And here I was pontificating and waxing eloquent on this journey to the essence of reality that cuts through all the layers to places that are indeterministic states, beyond our capacity to define, beyond paradox, following a blueprint, using these connections to connect between the inner and the outer, between form and function, between soul and body, between the indeterministic and the deterministic, between that which is the essence and the expression, all the way down to a concrete level. Till we reach a level of fusion, total fusion of seamlessness between spirit and matter, energy becomes one with existence. And here I was going on, and it was really nice. I say people were listening. Some were even mesmerized, I would say. And they were like so taken by it. It was beautiful. A few weeks passed. One guy, remember me, he was from Jay and the Americans. It was a rock band in the 60s. Jay Black was the head of the band, and he was one of the singers. Comes over to me and says to me, before the class, "You've been talking about these fascinating things. We're all loving it. But tell me, are you talking about God?" And I laughed and I said, "Yes, but shh, don't tell anyone. Don't spoil it for the others." And what I discovered, even more than I could have imagined, that language, even though on one hand language connects us, we're always told, communicate, especially today, break the silence. She doesn't know what you're thinking. He doesn't know what you're imagining. We need to communicate, but communication also can be loaded. Because a word that to me can be completely innocuous and innocent, if I said it to you, it may be the word that your mother used whenever she went ballistic. So words can also be barriers that are walls between us. And especially when it comes to religious words like God, like faith, and so on. That's why it works so well. So I say this right here as well. The word God has gotten a very bad rap. I don't even like to use the word because I know what people think it means. Unless I control and I can change the stereotype. But people have a very wrong definition of God, not the God that I relate to. To me, God is basically worshiping, if you wish to use the word worship, which I also really wouldn't use, I don't like the word, but it's respecting something greater than you are, that you are not the beginning and end of existence and the universe. Is the foundation of everything that makes us more refined, because it's the antithesis to arrogance, to self. Someone says to me, "I don't worship gods." I said, "So you worship yourself?" Again, I don't like the word worship because it sounds very negative in a way, like you're giving up. I find it to be the concept that people who are actually good human beings, whether it's because they're wired that way, or they were born that way, or they were educated that way, it makes no difference what word they use. They are ultimately respecting the dignity of another. They're not letting themselves be narcissistic, selfish survival of the fittest. You know, the guy that goes camping with his friend in a tent, and in the middle of the night he wakes up, he hears something rustling about, and he sees a big grizzly bear coming. Dangerous. So he wakes up his friend and says, "We got to get out of here." He says, "What's the matter?" "There's a bear." And the friend that's waking up sees his friend who woke him up tying his sneakers quickly. He's tying his shoelaces. He says, "What do you think? You can outrun the bear?" He says, "No, all I have to do is outrun you." This dog eats dog attitude is the fact that someone is a good person that's ready to pay a price, forego their own personal comfort for another. I don't really care what word they use, and I don't need even to define it, but to me that's a godly act. Why is it a godly act? Because it's not the word, it's the behavior. And if I see a person who says, "I'm a big believer in God, and I follow all the rules, and I'm more religious and more zealot than anybody out there," and when it comes to a simple doing a favor or another, they're not ready to be inconvenience themselves. But what God? What lip service? Well, because they dress a certain way. The word God means transcendence beyond yourself. Now, of course, God means a lot more than that, and it's not really the topic of our conversation. But in our context, so absolutely, depends what you mean by the word God. If it's the false God that people think is God, then you can be good without such a God. Yes, absolutely. As a matter of fact, there are many good people because they don't embrace a false God that has nothing to do with being a kinder person. But in essence, if you really want to know what God means, yes, a higher, deeper reality, the essence of it all, and beyond it all. And when you are able to embrace that, by definition, automatically it means you will be a better person. Because you will not worship yourself. It will not be just about me, me, me. So goodness and godliness for me is synonymous. If it's not synonymous for you, I have no problem with that. I'm not here trying to persuade anyone. But you have to maybe revisit what the word God means for you. And for that matter, what goodness means. Because there are many people who claim that goodness is also not really good. You're not goodness. Read The Selfish Gene from Richard Dawkins or other evolutionary biologists. They'll tell you every goodness, every act of altruism, every giving act in this world is selfishness. It's just because you need it in order to be better. You giving creates a better society, makes you survive better. I find that to be, frankly, disturbing, that everything is explained, every noble act, every sacrifice of a parent for a child, stranger to stranger, in history and in our lives is all dismissed as being yet another version of self. Well, the fact of the matter is I've seen people who've helped others at their own expense, and I've seen people who will not help others. So however you explain it, the bottom line is the idea of God is the same as the idea of transcendence, that there's something more to reality than you, than me. And that gives us a fighting chance to be able to transcend that selfish nature that we may have and be a little more selfless, and a little more giving, and a little kinder. So it's not the semantics, it's not the words. I don't go by words, I don't go by what people say. It's behavior. And there is godly behavior. I call that godly. I call good behavior godly behavior. And godly behavior good behavior. And they feed each other. And that can be understood very well by each one of us as soon as you realize that's not all about you. It's not all about me. There's a bigger picture. And that bigger picture includes each one of us complementing each other, synergizing, cross-pollinating. We all need each other, and each of us needs you. Because we're all part of this larger symphony. The indispensable you is absolutely necessary. But at the same time, it's not because you're such a great person, but it's because there's something, a higher reality that has given us all that inherent value that we all deserve and should live up to. So based on that, there's no question that we can and access that divine image in which each one of us is created and live up to it. And that's what makes life really worth it. So thank you for listening. Simon Jacobson here. MeaningfulLife.com is our website. Please comment, share, like, give us your feedback, subscribe, share it with your friends. I love to hear from you. And let's stay in touch. Let's stay in touch. And let's introduce a little more love, a little more kindness and goodness in our own little world and our sphere of influence, and by extension, our ripple effect across the entire universe. Be well, and I'll see you soon again. Thank you.